Like a vengeful god, I will
Raise this earth to the ground!
raise this earth. I will take out all of them!
So the mission today is to explore the distinct flavors of Antisocial Personality Disorder, or ASPD, but we're doing it in kind of a fun way, through the lens of supernatural television.
Which is surprisingly effective.
Yeah.
You want to get angry, kid? Let's get angry!
And to really understand the mechanics behind those dangerous minds, we are going on a fascinating deep dive today. We're looking at this incredible essay by Paul from Teen Wolf News, and it's titled 31 Flavors of Crazy. Paul takes the villains of MTV's Teen Wolf and applies rigorous real-world psychological frameworks to them. And he grounds his behavioral analysis heavily in the official Teen Wolf wiki.
And honestly, even if you listening right now don't care about werewolves at all, this essay is basically a masterclass.
Yeah, exactly.
It decodes how manipulative personalities operate in the real world, which is incredibly useful knowledge.
Definitely.
You can't say anything. Please, don't say anything.
Why not?
Because I never said anything about Donovan.
Let's establish the real-world baseline, just so we know what metrics we're using.
Good idea. So in the modern diagnostic manual, the DSM-5-TR, you actually won't find separate diagnoses for psychopathy and sociopathy.
Really? They're just gone.
Well, they're lumped together under the broad umbrella of antisocial personality disorder.
Okay.
But practitioners, criminologists, and researchers still heavily separate the two in practice.
Because they look so different.
Exactly. The way they present and the way they're formed are drastically different. Psychopathy is generally categorized as neurodevelopmental, so it's nature.
Right, like you're born with it.
Exactly. It's highly organized, incredibly calculated, and marked by a total lack of autonomic empathy.
And sociopathy is the other side of that.
Right. Sociopathy is environmental, it's nurture, or, well, the severe lack of it. It's characterized by volatility, impulsivity, and fractured emotional bonds, usually brought on by severe trauma.
Okay, so tell me if this analogy works.
Huh.
Is psychopathy kind of like a factory hardware defect? Like you buy a computer and right out of the box, the empathy chip is physically missing.
That's a great way to put it.
Right, so the machine runs, it processes information flawlessly, but it just can't run the empathy program because the physical architecture isn't there.
Exactly. And the physical structures of the brain actually reflect this. With innate psychopathy, we see underreactivity in the amygdala, which processes fear and emotional resonance. The brain literally does not generate the sensation of empathy.
Wow. And so sociopathy would be more like a corrupted software update?
Yes, precisely. The computer had the empathy chip. Everything was built to function socially, but a massive virus, which would be environmental trauma, scrambles the operating system.
So the system gets unpredictable.
Right. It becomes erratic and prone to crashing under stress. Early trauma floods the brain with cortisol, and that chronic stress physically alters the prefrontal cortex.
Which controls impulses, right?
Exactly. Impulse control and long-term planning.
Okay, so with that hardware versus software framework in mind, let's look at the extreme end of the hardware defect.
Yeah, let's look at Peter Hale.
Right, so Paul's essay points to Peter as the archetype of the methodical psychopath.
He really is.
Please don't kill me.
Do you know who wrote that list?
Laura Hale.
Turn around, Adrian. Turn around and I'll show you. Turn around.
No, please.
Look at me. Look at what you've done.
Following this devastating arson attack that wipes out his family, Peter doesn't just lash out in blind rage.
No, he goes completely underground.
Right. He retreats into the shadows. He meticulously plans. He exercises extreme patience and uses severe interpersonal manipulation to execute the people responsible.
And to build his own power base. He operates completely instrumentally, like every single action is just a calculated step toward a specific goal.
Yes. And what stands out in Paul's analysis is Peter's total disregard for established social norms. He just replaces the rules of society with his own self-defined morality.
Which is terrifying.
Right.
To a methodical psychopath, societal laws aren't moral imperatives, are they?
Not at all. They're merely logistical obstacles. They have what we call cognitive empathy.
Meaning they know what you're feeling?
Yes, they can intellectually understand what you're feeling and use that to manipulate you, but they lack effective empathy. They don't feel the emotional weight of your pain.
So other people are just pieces on a board.
Exactly. In Peter's case, human beings and supernatural creatures are just disposable pawns. Moving a pawn isn't malicious to him, it's just a requirement to win the game.
There is this chilling moment that Teen Wolf News highlights to show this cognitive distortion. Stiles Stilinski confronts Peter.
Oh, I know the scene you're talking about.
So you're not gonna kill me?
Don't you understand yet? I'm not the bad guy here.
And the fascinating thing is, he isn't lying to Stiles in that moment.
He actually believes that.
He does. He is stating what he perceives as an objective fact. His internal logic is flawless to him because his self-defined framework dictates that his survival and his goals are the only metrics of right and wrong.
Man, that is intense. But wait, I'm stuck on something here.
What's that?
So if psychopathy means your empathy hardware is totally missing and you just view people as chess pieces, how does Peter genuinely love his daughter?
That is the big question.
Right. Because according to the official canon, Peter actively seeks vengeance out of deep family loyalty. And he develops this completely unforced, genuine bond with his biological daughter.
I honestly have no idea where you get your obstinacy from.
I get it from you.
You certainly do not.
So how can he be a psychopath if he actually cares about his kid? It seems like a massive contradiction to the clinical rule we just established.
It definitely seems like a contradiction until you look at specialized psychological literature, which is exactly what Paul does in his essay.
Okay, so how does Paul explain it?
He identifies Peter not as a pure psychopath, but as a disempathetic sociopath.
Disempathetic, meaning what exactly?
It's an atypical presentation. It means the subject possesses localized empathy.
Localized, so it only applies to specific targets.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
The neuroaffective pathways that empathy hardware aren't 100% severed. A few vital wires remain intact.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so this allows for legitimate, unforced warmth toward a very select cohort of biological kin, but it is strictly compartmentalized.
So outside of his daughter and his family legacy.
Those pathways shut down entirely. The rest of the world is treated with callous, manipulative hostility.
That is wild. He could literally look at his daughter with genuine protective love and then turn around and look at the person standing right next to her as an inanimate object to be exploited.
Exactly. It requires a highly compartmentalized psyche, but it allows him to function with deadly efficiency while still maintaining that core biological drive to protect his lineage.
Okay, so if Peter's hyper-calculated, localized empathy is the pinnacle of antisocial survival, what happens when someone doesn't have a shred of that impulse control?
Then you get the exact opposite manifestation of ASPD.
Right, the disorganized, erratic, hostile sociopath. Which brings us to Sebastian Valet.
Oh. Go ahead. Tell them it's me. Now watch me tear them apart in a matter of moments.
Yeah, if Peter's the grandmaster playing chess, Sebastian is the force that just shatters the board.
He just flips the table.
Completely. He operates with an absolute nullity of empathy. He has no localized bonds, no protective instincts for kin, and most importantly, zero strategy for risk mitigation.
Because he's entirely driven by impulsivity.
Impulsivity and effective grandiosity.
Effective grandiosity.
Yeah.
That's the profound delusion of invincibility.
Yes.
You have killed children.
I kill whatever dares to cross my path. It's what I am, what I become.
Neurologically speaking, hostile sociopaths suffer from extreme dopamine dysregulation, and that's combined with a complete failure in the brain's risk assessment centers.
Meaning they don't learn from their mistakes.
Exactly. They do not synthesize past negative consequences to predict future outcomes. Because they don't process fear normally, they genuinely believe the rules of mortality just don't apply to them.
They just seek the immediate thrill of destruction.
You won't catch me, and you won't kill me. We're family, Malia.
Unbelievable arrogance.
Right. He's literally daring the world to come after him because he has this massive, too big to fail mindset.
And that consequent blind bravado is exactly what defines the hostile sociopath. They routinely expose themselves to severe, immediate danger because the impulse control required to stay hidden simply does not exist.
But this brings up a major chicken or the egg question for me.
Okay, lay it on me.
So Sebastian is afflicted with this magical lycanthrope curse, right? It turns him into a literal monster.
Right.
So from a behavioral standpoint, is his consequence blind bravado just a symptom of this supernatural curse scrambling his brain? Or was he fundamentally broken before the magic ever touched him?
That's a crucial distinction, and Paul's essay makes a point to address it. He notes that the supernatural element did not overwrite Sebastian's agency.
So he was already like that.
Yes. When Sebastian received the curse, he experienced zero internal moral conflict. The power didn't corrupt him, it merely enabled his pre-existing architecture.
Wow. Because normally, you'd think of the hero's journey. Someone gets terrifying power, and their first instinct is to suppress it or use it for good so they don't hurt anyone.
Exactly. But Sebastian willfully chose mass slaughter. He was entirely aware of the moral structures and ethical laws of his society. He understood what society deemed evil.
He just didn't care.
He made the conscious, consequence-blind choice to break those laws with profound disregard for the fallout. Like we said earlier, the software update for empathy was available, and he deleted the files himself.
That is such a great way to put it. Okay, so we have these two rigid, unchangeable poles. We have Peter's cold, calculated psychopathy and Sebastian's chaotic, impulsive sociopathy.
Right.
But the most compelling part of Paul's analysis is the introduction of a third character, one who proves that these pathologies aren't always static.
They can actually be fluid and highly adaptive under the right pressure.
Which brings us to Theo Raeken.
Yes. Theo is the adaptive paradox of the spectrum. Initially, his pathology presents as structural chaos. He projects this illusion of being a master strategist, desperately trying to mimic Peter's cold calculus.
He wants to be the chess master.
He acts as though he is 10 steps ahead, but his macro-level execution is a systemic failure.
Yeah, Paul uses a really specific example for this. Theo attempts to manipulate the main characters, Liam Dunbar and Scott McCall.
Right, the divide and conquer strategy.
Exactly.
I mean, seriously, you couldn't have waited 5 minutes? I should have stayed. I should have made sure.
Theo successfully drives a massive wedge between them, but it achieves absolutely no systemic control.
None at all.
He creates all this localized chaos and emotional distress, but he doesn't know how to capitalize on it.
I'll tell you where your dad is. If you promise not to help Scott. There he is!
I kind of compared it to dealing with a highly toxic middle manager.
Oh, that's a perfect analogy.
Right. Like, they're exceptionally good at creating office drama, whispering in people's ears, turning coworkers against each other to secure their own tiny fiefdom.
Yeah.
But if you actually handed them the keys to the entire company, they would bankrupt it in a week.
Because they have zero macro vision and no understanding of long-term operational stability.
Yeah.
And the psychological mechanism behind that failure is fascinating.
What's driving it?
Well, the reason toxic middle managers and characters like Theo fail at macro leadership is because they lack the theory of mind required to sustain long-term loyalty.
Okay.
Theo's primary driving motivation is group affiliation.
I'm your alpha. And all of you belong to me.
He desperately craves the psychological validation and physical safety of being part of a pack.
He needs the structure of other people just to feel secure.
But his deeply ingrained sociopathic conditioning makes it impossible for him to maintain the very structure he craves.
Because he treats them all terribly.
Exactly. The second he secures a pack, he defaults to viewing his subordinates as completely disposable. The instant a packmate disagrees with his immediate desires, he discards or destroys them.
Wow, so it's this constant isolating paradox. He desperately craves connection for survival, but his pathology forces him to detonate those connections the moment they are formed.
Yes, which leads directly to Theo facing the ultimate consequence of those failed strategies. He's defeated and imprisoned in a literal underworld dimension,
where he's trapped in a prolonged, traumatic psychological loop.
And Teen Wolf News argues this wasn't just narrative punishment. It functioned as an intense, forced neurological intervention.
Which is such a cool concept. And Paul connects this perfectly to the broader mechanics of the official canon.
He does. He cross-references Theo's imprisonment with the mystical skinwalkers.
Right, because the official Teen Wolf Wiki details how skinwalkers use intense environmental pressure,
which they notably did with the character Kira Yukimura, to stabilize her erratic spirit.
So the underworld dimension essentially acted as a psychological pressure cooker, utilizing radical behavioral conditioning.
Exactly. And the results of that conditioning are undeniably evident. When Theo emerges from this dimension, the erratic, toxic middle manager behavior is just gone.
He's totally different.
He is substantially more stable, cooperative, and even voluntarily risks his own safety to protect the very people he previously tried to manipulate.
We're both getting caught. You can do it while you're running. I'm going down fighting.
But I have to wonder, though, and this is something for you listening, did a literal hell dimension actually cure a sociopath?
That is the million-dollar question.
Right. If sociopathy is a scrambled operating system, did the trauma of that dimension debug the software, or did it just teach him how to fake being good to avoid punishment?
And that is the ultimate debate surrounding adaptive antisocial behavior. Paul breaks this down into two distinct clinical theories.
Okay, let's hear them.
First is the empathy hypothesis. This theory posits that the extreme repeated trauma of the dimension triggered radical neuroplasticity.
Meaning the sheer magnitude of the suffering literally rewired his brain.
Exactly. It forced his brain to develop a genuine capacity for effective empathy that just did not exist before.
So the trauma literally forged the missing neural pathways. It allowed him to genuinely feel the emotional weight of others.
That's the first theory.
And the second theory?
The masking hypothesis. This suggests that Theo's internal pathology hasn't changed at all. He remains a high-functioning sociopath without effective empathy.
Run.
So he's basically just faking it.
Essentially, yes. Through the traumatizing trial and error of his imprisonment, his highly adaptable brain realized that his previous operational style betraying everyone resulted in eternal torment.
So his brain just calculated a better survival strategy?
Yes, he learned to brilliantly mask his antisocial tendencies and flawlessly mimic prosocial cooperative behavior.
Oh, wow. So he's playing nice, risking his life for others, not out of newfound moral goodness, but because his brain calculated that cooperation yields a significantly higher probability of long-term survival.
Exactly. It keeps him out of hell.
What's the plan?
Steal a horse to get to the hunt.
You're kidding, right? I went through all this to keep you from being taken.
The overarching takeaway from Paul's analysis is that antisocial pathology is never a monolith. Whether you're analyzing supernatural villains or trying to navigate a highly manipulative coworker, understanding the specific mechanics of their behavior is key.
Whether they're methodical, hostile, or adaptive.
Right. That is the only way to really understand their motivations and protect yourself from their strategies.
Labeling someone a psychopath might feel good in the moment because it puts a complicated person into a neat little box.
Yeah.
But the psychological reality of how they process the world is so much more intricate. Keep that in mind the next time you try to decode the dangerous minds around you.